augmented reality is not a new concept, right? I think it's over 100 years old, actually. Specifically, augmented reality for construction, I mean, it has been around in waves for quite some time. And I think it's normal for any kind of technology, right? It will be first something for techies to play around with. Then it will hit the wall of people who are enthusiastic to try it, right? And then they will be disillusioned.
On this week's show, Seeing into the Future with Alex Sidorov from Gamma AR. All right, I'm back. I got Nathan Wood with his version of a Christmas sweater on, I take it. Ugly Christmas sweater time of year. I don't know, it's a little less creepy Christmas and a little more creepy cat, but all right, we'll go with it, buddy.
I feel like we shouldn't say any more just to make sure people get on YouTube and see what's going on.
Yeah, we just found out from Alex there's a lot of people listening, but not necessarily actually watching. So you'll want to flip over your tab real quick. Then you can flip back to detailing or whatever it is, or go back to running. Hopefully you didn't look too much while you were running, fall off a curb and hurt yourself. So, and with that, Alex, thank you. Longtime listener. A lot of communication between us. Great to have you finally sitting down with us, man.
It's amazing. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, and I'm going to give people a little insight. You're sitting down at a real opposite time of the day for you. You're across the pond from us now, aren't you?
Yes. I'm I'm sitting in Germany, just close to the border to Luxembourg, where the company Gamma AR is, and I'm actually working abroad every day.
That's awesome. Wow. So we are truly going for the international flavor. So I think y'all are going to want to tune in and enjoy the ride, as we say, and geek out from, a whole new perspective. So with that, Alex, you're the COO and CFO of Gamma AR. Not a new company, actually been around for a while, but in the augmented mixed reality space. So give us a little bit of history, because I love the folks like me that come in from outside and spend time learning construction.
Are you trying to reach the innovators and decision makers in construction technology? Then look no further than sponsoring the ConTech Crew. That's right, we're taking new advertisers. Email us at advertising@thecontechcrew.com to learn more.
Yeah. Well, actually, I come from outside of the construction world. I did for the major part of my career corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, so helping one company acquiring another. And then a couple years ago, I discovered this little gem, Gamma AR, and when the opportunity presented itself to join the rocket ship, so I did. It was always clear for me that I will end up in construction. My brother is a civil engineer, but this gives everything a whole new perspective, because when you hear the stories from how things are at construction, it's very difficult to imagine, coming from other industries, that things can be working this way and have been working this way for a couple of years. Now I'm with Gamma AR.
So there was a couple of challenges that, I think your perspective changed on them as you joined the industry. So talk a little bit about coming from that corporate finance and, mergers and acquisitions, and what you thought might be going on in construction versus, what happens to all of us. We learn a little bit of a new perspective over time.
Absolutely. So the first thing when I thought about construction was always, okay, a guy standing there looking at a plan, screaming at other people for messing up things. I was thinking back-breaking work, labor, and that's it. Of course, everybody builds, so I thought, okay, this must be the most profitable business to be in. Fast forward, now you start to get deeper into this, and you realize it's not as profitable as it should be. That's the first thing. Second thing, there is so much tech in it. Any other industry I have worked with can actually only dream about this. And I'm talking from boring office jobs to actually things which are supposed to be very, very forward-thinking. I worked on a cryptocurrency exchange, for example. So you will think this is the advance of technology per se. But actually, no, construction is so diverse, so different, and it doesn't get out. So this was shocking to me. Another shocking thing was the profitability part. right? So sixth biggest industry in the world, and the margins are so slim that it's just a volume business, and everybody's so afraid of making any mistake because it might eat up everything. And honestly, I'm surprised. So every time I'm researching a new company or a new market, it's just mesmerizing how many companies are doing very well. And on the other side, on the same website, on the other side of this, you have like this number of bankruptcies, one over the other, over the other. And this just doesn't make sense. You hear about how construction is growing, and you hear these projections, like in the next 10 years, we are going to build 200% more, right? And this doesn't make sense in my head. So yeah, every day I'm learning something which is surprising, shocking, and intriguing.
I like that you flip two truths there, right? There is this, we get beat over the head consistently that construction is not technology forward, that we're not a technology industry. And I think you're absolutely right. We are. And in fact, far more than most. And there's far more of it required because of our diversity. So, but then also on the flip side, like we keep hearing about record backlogs and record construction projects. We used to talk when I first started 10 years ago, like a $200 million project was unheard of. And now that's small chump change. We're seeing $2-3 billion projects at times. But to quote a recent podcast by our friends at Procore, Josh Bone was on, and he said, the problem is we're growing the top line, but we're not growing the bottom line. And honestly, growing the top line without growing the bottom line, your finance, that's just increased risk, which again goes against another common, conception that we're risk averse. Well, we're risk averse when we're building things, but not when we're buying out projects. I guess there's this duplicity. So, I'm interested now. You've jumped in on the technology side yourself, Alex. Like, how do you put all this together? How do you even help anybody? Where do you start with just your thought process and where you're headed?
So I think something which majorly changed between the early days when I started, and I tried to absorb, and actually I learned a lot of things from this very podcast. So it's a really, really pleasure to be here. So this was my first source of truth, essentially. But it's so interesting. So you listen to all of those people trying to sell different tech solutions, and all of their speeches start with, "We need to explain construction people what they need to do." And what I discovered for me over the years, that this is actually completely wrong. That's completely missing the point, that the construction people know what they do. There are a lot of variables around them which prohibit them to do what they are supposed to do the way they want to do, right? And technology can solve some of those bottlenecks, so they can actually focus on building. They should not learn how to build. They know. They need to somehow figure out how to pass this on to other people. That's another part which technology may be solving, not enough in my case. So I think technology for me in this regard is rather something which might attract early enough younger people to take over this experience before it's too late. But until we get there, technology is there to enable the people in the field.
I agree. I guess, I mean, you've been a long time listener, so you probably know a little bit of my perspective coming from civil engineering as in the schooling, but then general contracting and this whole world of running nonprofits and trying to build your own business. Which again, you realize that money does really run everything, and it's kind of funny. I think there's a lot of us technologists that kind of almost are taught to hate the bean counters and to hate that kind of world, but I think that it is so important. And so I'm curious, both from your mergers and acquisitions perspective, but also your family. You mentioned brother in civil engineering. Like, how have both of those perspectives shaped, I guess, what you agree with, maybe, of what you're hearing from the industry, and maybe some things that you don't agree with, that you kind of got an argument against some of the things we're saying?
So one thing, and I'm not sure I'm completely disagreeing where I'm going with this, but in all the other industries I've worked on, getting the right margin is the focus, right? So cost cutting, but it's not just about cost cutting, right? It's a cost efficient cost cutting. So you don't really tumble your top line, but at the same time can really reduce or lean your costs, right? And everybody is especially if you go like in financial services, everybody's fighting for those basis points of a percentage, right? Just to a little bit, because the volume is big in a global world, right? In construction somehow, we all know like the profitability is what 2-3%. And I hear my brother complaining about the projects which he needs to validate the statics. I don't know how you call it in English, but he needs to like recalculate the statics, right? And he says it's just incredible that up to the moment of the delivery of the building, he had draft written on everything, essentially, at almost all projects, because nobody wants to actually commit to anything because things might change and you might want to change this. And we have this mentality in construction of, first of all, first came, first served, right? So after you, the deluge, right? The flood. But even with this, people, when they budget for a project, they put this huge buffers for potential risk which will come. Nobody knows, but they know there will come, right? So this is a fact. Everybody knows there will be mistakes, there will be rework, and we just budget for this. And on the other side, people keep selling, yeah, every project is a unique flower, so it cannot be anticipated. And we're thinking, okay, true, but you've made the same mistake. Okay, in different geographies, in different types, but it was the same mistake over and over. How can this be? Right? I think Tennis recently posted something about a quote attributed to Einstein, right? That if you do something repeatedly and expect different results, it's insanity. But I think everybody will be against this in construction in general, right? They don't do the same thing, but the result is still the same, very, very much. And this doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, this hasn't hit the world yet. There's an episode to Alex, to give Alex a pass here. We just recorded another episode that you're going to hear come out after this with Charlie Dunn, and this is going to play really well with the two of you talking about this, because you said it. No one in other industries, like, it's cost cutting, right? It's the right margin. So no one in manufacturing designs something that they can't manufacture for a profit, right? They don't ignore the manufacturing process and the cost of manufacturing while they're designing and prototyping something. But I love that you just said we do something different every time and wonder why we still get the same mistake. Because that is a little bit opposite of doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The definition of insanity, I'd say, doing different things over and over and getting the same results is called construction. That's going to be our new definition. But you're right. It's the idea of, we're not actually prototyping everything, and we approach every building, every project as a snowflake when really it's not. And that's, again, something we talked about with Charlie, is you've poured concrete before, you've done steel before, you've done exterior cladding before, you've done glazing and windows. Like, these are all things we've done. We're just not taking the time to do lessons learned and to plan ahead so that we can have different outcomes. I think, Nathan, you're the king of, we should do this so that, the problem statements. And this is probably one of them there for you.
Well, it is, but what I'm thinking here is, or like what analogies, whatever, can we draw from this? And I equate it. I think we're missing the messaging here a little bit. So I'll get on my soapbox for a second and use like safety incidents on a highway. And so it's like, that is something that, of course, the goal is always to have 0 deaths. I mean, you never have 0 accidents, but you have a goal of 0, but you never reach 0. People are going to die on the highway. Like, that is a calculated risk that we know is extremely high. And we don't talk about it nearly as much as we talk about construction safety or construction defects, all these other things. And so I think if we don't take this mindset of, yes, mistakes are going to happen, even if we do BIM, even if we do all these things. So we shouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater when something doesn't work. Like, there's something to that mindset of, how do we treat mistakes and failures in construction, because we've had such an arm's length, like, it's not my fault, finger pointing, liability type mindset to it. And until we change that and sort of really build that ownership around those failures and why they happened, because Alex, to your point, like, we can ask, how can that be in this disbelief? Or it's like, man, like, these guys are not dumb, as you said earlier. Like, these guys are really smart. So like, there's obviously something going on that's putting them in some sort of condition that is making this rational to them. So maybe we're asking, how can this be? what is their situation that we're not understanding? And that whole empathy side of things, I think, is where we'll end up finding the answer. So it is the same question. It's just asking it in a little bit different tone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where technology can enable. So it can take away all of the fuzzy stuff around so they can actually focus on the core.
Exactly. But they have to be willing to ask the question, right? You have to have the culture that's comfortable saying, it's okay to know that we made a mistake and to know where it happened, and we're not going to blame people, but we are going to learn from failure. And goes into the whole AstroTeller, Google X mindset of innovation and innovating through failure. And I think there's just a lot of cultural, as we'll talk about foreshadowing to some of the new stuff later in the week. But I think that's, to me, that's off my soapbox now. But I think there's a cultural mindset that is step one. And then technology opens up to the possibilities, and then back to us to make decisions to move forward with it.
And you're right, Nathan. That's where technology can be truly powerful because it can eliminate some of the noise. And like, I'll take what you said about we don't have to teach them how to build, Alex. You're right, we don't. However, what I think we can teach them is what's not working in the process or what's not valuable in the process. And most of that isn't the construction itself. It's the noise. It's the back and forth. It's the dotting I's and crossing T's for the sake of not getting sued in the lawsuit, and pencil whipping versus actually, like you said, Nathan, being transparent around, okay, these things did happen. So how can we continually push for closer and better, not to zero? And to that point, this is where I want to bring in, like, Alex, you've been out there, and Gamma AR, the company that you joined, it has watched through augmented reality and mixed reality. And I love this. I mean, I had to force him to talk about this, guys. So Alex did not come here to talk about it, but mixed reality has gone through an evolution. And I want you to talk about, and quite frankly, we saw the height of inflated expectations out of it. I think we've been through the trough of disillusionment, and we're somewhere when you might be able to tell us where we are on the path of that curve, and what you think was, what made you want to get involved and stay involved. And Gamma has, been around for a while.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, augmented reality is not a new concept, right? I think it's over 100 years old, actually. And even in the 50s of the last century, there were people trying to have this Damocles sword, this huge head-mounted display. You couldn't really move around. It was like 30 kilos, so it was attached to the ceiling and everything. So I think that's definitely not new. And specifically augmented reality for construction, I mean, it has been around in waves for quite some time. And I think it's normal for any kind of technology, right? It will be first something for techies to play around with. Then it will hit the wall of people who are enthusiastic to try it, right? And then they will be disillusioned. And this is something which we see with every wave, with every technology. People expect that when they take something in their hands, if it's technology, it needs to be perfect from the very start. Just technology cannot fail. And it's interesting. You talk to them about, okay, we can make you like 200% more efficient, right? Or 300% more efficient. So you can do the same work you did like in an hour. You can do all of the evaluation, QA, QC. You can do it in 15 minutes and actually spot mistakes without just checking off things and then realizing later there was a mistake. But even despite all of this, they will expect that on top of this technology, it will recognize things, mail things for them, maybe even bring lunch. Right. So at some point, I think what happened a lot over the last 10 years, or maybe even 15 years, there was a shift in mindset, which we definitely start feeling even more and more in the past years. And maybe it's renewal of the generation of the people who take decisions in construction, right? Who are ready to embrace to technology, and they understand that it might be working for specific use cases, not for others. And I mean, you cannot use a screwdriver as a hammer, right? And it's exactly this. So you need to understand which technology is what for. So I think the mindset of, okay, we understand where this could be applied in which way and what it does not. So realization of limitations, this is something which came a long way in the last 10 years, let's say. So I think the biggest wave of construction AR was around 10, 15 years ago, right? With Visual Life coming up and being acquired by Unity. So there was this big hope of, okay, now things are working. But in the evolution, we came from head-mounted displays because you needed very, very performant devices to, okay, we have handheld devices which can actually show things, but not entirely. So they can show models, but only the light ones and only sections of them. So yeah, if you want to use it, you need first to spend like a couple of hours in the office trimming things. And then you bring it to site and it will not be perfect because there will be a lot of drift and a lot of things. So yes, theoretically it will work, but practically it's a toy. And the problem is once people realize it's a toy, it's almost impossible to convince them that something else has changed. And it's like, I have people saying this when we start to talk to them. Yeah, I already tried it 15 years ago. And it's like saying, okay, I drove a Fiat sometimes in my teens, in the 80s, 90s. And then now I have a new electric car and I will not touch it because, well, I already seen a car. It's enough, right? So we have a little bit of this feeling. Luckily, the handheld devices, the iPads of this world, they came a long way. Over the last 3-4 generations, it's just incredible how the tech is performing now. So now we can actually take a huge model and saying, of course, hardware is an important part. Of course, we at Gamma, we also found a way to be able to process huge models. But now people can actually take a huge model, pharmaceutical plant. We have a nuclear reactor, right? Customers, and they load them and can actually walk with a normal tablet without having to invest like thousands and thousands in new devices, right? So it makes it more accessible. But again, it makes it accessible to people who are used to use tablets. And I mean, we have so frequently now questions, okay, can I take a helmet on site? Because it's typically asked from people from the office. And it's a normal wish, right? Working hands-free makes definitely sense. And at some point, this will be the norm. But look, it took us 10 years to convince the site super to have an iPad in his hand and actually use it, not just carry it around. And now you wanted to give him a helmet and actually do stuff. That's crazy. That's not going to work for the next years, right? You will not get mass adoption. And there will be still some people wanting to do this, but at least they're happy with the tablet. Let us help them use the tablet in a way that they maybe are used to do it, right? So this was a big part of this. So I think there are so the readiness and the mindset, the technology, so the hardware, made a lot of leaps in the past. And well, I know all of your opinions about BIM, and I'm not saying BIM is there to change the world. BIM is a way of structuring data, right? And be it good. Is it improvable? Yes. Is it applied by everybody? No. Is it applied by those who apply it correctly? Not always, right? So there are differences. There are differences even within the same company, right? Let alone talking about different geographies and whatnot. But overall, I think we can agree that there are a lot of pull, especially from asset owners now, pulling people into structuring data. Yeah, and this is today BIM. It might evolve into something different, which is called different, right? Many asset owners to whom I speak, they see like BIM, digital twin, everything is the same, data twin, right? It doesn't matter. Give me data which is structured, which you can use, and that's fine, right? And this is a pull coming from asset owners who are actually paying the bucks. So I've seen an evolution in most markets, right? Some later than earlier, but than others. But I've seen an evolution that people go from, okay, we know we need to deliver BIM, so either we set up a budget for a fine because we will not deliver it, or we set up a budget because we will do this post-mortem once everything is done, right? And you do see this parallels evolving, but in the end, more and more people think, okay, if I'm already invested in this, I might as well try to use it properly. And this try to use this might break down at some points, but that's, for example, what we see people are actually using Gamma for. They say, okay, I can actually now bring my BIM model to the site, and people don't even talk about BIM. They see that, okay, there is something which people in the office did, which resembles or not whatever I see on the side, and I can guide them. I can see what they did. Like, this is a common language. And now we can even modify this and keep seeing this so that we can actually work with the same thing. So even for those who are a little bit, let's say, afraid of using 3D methodologies, right? We do see that this helps them to actually ease into this because they see it's not just a funny exercise by some office people.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at is like what I would call the minimum viable use case or whatever, because there are a lot of different ways where you could use Gamma AR out in the field. All the way up to potentially wearing a headset and using it for layout. Which Jeff, I remember Cody Nowak way back in the day, showing some of those early HoloLens examples of rebar layout and some crazy like, oh yeah, that'd be cool, like on the Vegas showroom floor, but. But I think today, again, 8+ years later, the inspection is kind of that minimum viable use case where it's not hard to find, one inspector, kind of either whether it's quality control or safety or whatever it might be. It's probably some combination sort of thing that would use this tool as a way of checking against the model and really a way of if regardless of whether the model's wrong and the field's correct and you're updating the model, or the field's wrong and the model's correct and you're updating the field. It's just sort of this cross-checking for owners that do care about getting a reliable as-built. And, again, you only need one person that's kind of BIM savvy in that case. And then the hope is that it spreads from there to other use cases. But, I don't know if you're seeing that in sort of, or if there's other use cases that are really jumping out as early adopters.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of different use cases which you can imagine, of course, with augmented reality. But I think the most fundamental one is that we human beings are limited in the way how we think about things, right? So nobody can imagine 10 different drawings overlaid over each other in 3D in front of nobody can do this, especially if they need to try to remember this from the trailer, right? And the problem, I think, until today was that most technology tries to push different data collection or whatever for the people in the office, forgetting a little bit that actually the people in the field are building stuff and they need to actually be able to take decisions. So the way how visualization helps them is it's not a surveying tool. So I talked about limitations. It's important to see the limitations, right? It is not a surveying tool. So yes, there might be some drift at some point. There might be something else. Of course, we are working on this and trying to correct as much as possible, right? But fundamentally, the problem it solves is that people are just not able to look up and say, oh yeah, that pipe is supposed to be 723. I think it will not fit in the space, right? In terms of like, nobody will be able to say this. But if it's floating in front of you, there's no need to make this guesstimate, right? You just see stuff. And just seeing stuff makes it much, much more accessible. Now, there are two sides of this. We had a customer running a little experiment where they gave an intern a tablet with Gamma, and a site super went through the site and they tried to do the make round. And after an hour, they looked who found the most mistakes. And it's just incredible that the intern was actually ahead, even though many mistakes were completely pointless. And so at the site, the experienced site super just didn't point the mouse because it was pointless, right? But it gives you this accessibility because it's so intuitive. So it is easy to actually act upon a stuff as you see it in front of you instead of trying to imagine things. So this is and you can do this and for visualization before things happen. So take decisions on the design, right? You can then do the QA/QC. You can even do progress tracking, right? But it's important to understand how exactly do you overlay this data over the reality to take decision because you want to see into the future.
Well, and this is where I think a number of things you've been talking about come together, because I think you talked about it earlier with BIM being just a way to structure data, right? It's structuring data. Data is a way of communicating, right? Drawing plans, doing anything is a way of trying to communicate an idea to a project delivery, to an asset itself. And we've been talking about the complexity. The complexity is none of us speaks the same language. So we need as many translation layers along the way as possible. And mixed reality is bringing a new translation layer to our ability to look at what design and intent was, what construction is, and where are they colliding and where are they off, and how quickly to your point, can we find and make a decision to keep the two flowing together? And none of us speaks the entirety of the language. So a visualization gives us that. And, I'm going to tap onto this too, is in that intern one. There's a lot of people out there that were yelling at you at their windshields right now. Like, that's just wasting time, because you're right. Like, the intern pointed out a bunch of things that they're not real problems, right? Are they wrong? Sure. But they're not real problems. What I hear in that is that's an opportunity at the end of the walk for the super to look through and go, hey, here's why I didn't really take those as problems. Now I'm imparting wisdom and experience, and I'm not just imparting it in oh, hey, look, you see that? Yeah, we don't worry about that. And continuing on, the person is not going to remember that. But if they saw it, marked it, continued on, and then sit down with the super, and the super's like, you see, this is why I didn't do those. And oh, by the way, I bet you they're going to see one that they didn't see and go, oh, that's awesome. Now we've got people learning and communicating. And the most important thing, Alex, is transferring that experience of construction and field through to the next group of people coming out, because we're losing it faster than we can bring them in. And you're also digitally memorializing that, like, right? Since you're doing that in a data layer, there's a historical representation of that process that can be utilized in the future. So I think this is really why you're seeing these asset managers, which, adopt and want to get more out of it. Yeah, they want to get more out of the things they're paying for, but ultimately they want a better, more efficient, more predictable product. And you're creating a communication layer visually that they can utilize it. And look, when the helmets are ready and they can be used, you'll be able to adapt to it. But right now, you're right. The iPad is no longer a hammer in the field anymore to hit the intern over the head with. It's actually something they use on a regular basis and enjoy because it helps them. So I'm interested, because we had to wrap it up here in a couple of minutes. Like, where are you excited to see this go? And, what are maybe some of the trends for folks listening that they should be, in your opinion, paying attention to for the next, say, year in 2025 or on?
So integration of different technologies. So now, since as donors are pulling and actually are getting more and more involved into the tech which is used during the whole process, not just giving it to somebody and saying, hey, take care of this, I want my finished building, right? They want to get involved. They want to have access and know that people are using the right technology. It forces also a lot of people to trying to align the technology in a way that it makes sense. So reality capture, for example, is something which was, I think it has like maybe 3-4 years of a head start on AR, right? So everybody understands what reality capture is today. Nobody needs to explain this, right? And asset owners understand, okay, if I want a model which is accurate, which is as built, I need to do reality capture, right? And I fully subscribe to this. We have a lot of customers who are using reality capture exactly for this. But the thing is that as built is a measure of how different you build from the design intent, right? So how do you reduce this at the very early stage preventatively? That's where you use the augmented reality bit, right? And even go even before, you should probably use some virtual reality while you're doing the design to anticipate things. And then you mentioned also, right? We have this problem of people retiring because construction is tough, right? It takes a toll on your health, and not just physical, but also your mental health, right? And we have very, very few examples of people extending their professional life by a couple of years by going back to the office and actually giving advice to people who are designing, right? Because people who design are usually not necessarily graduates, but less experienced people. They have rarely seen the scene. So there's the field. So that's why we have this clash between the one wants to create something clash-free and the other one wants something constructible. And one does not mean the other, right? So I do see that with time now, we will see a more streamlined flow of this information, which will again, allow also people to transfer this knowledge somehow between the whole value chain, right? And this will start with the asset owner pooling because, and that's also an interesting thing, which is increasingly looked at, right? The cost of your building are 80% during the time where it's actually operated, and only 20% of costs are during the construction, right? And asset owners understand this. So they want to optimize the 20, of course, but they want also to optimize in the very first couple of percent during design phase to make sure that the 80% are getting optimized as well. So, and since we have now this transversal view, we do see that this is driving a lot of nice results.
Yeah, I mean, Nathan, he nailed it, right? It's the integration of all of these different technologies and all of these different communication layers. And this is, I'm going to tie it to the beginning. We're not telling you how to build. What we're here to do is provide valuable data and valuable translation to continuous improvement from project to project, from asset to asset, over the life of our businesses to drive profitability, predictability, to drive better projects that are safer. And it takes all of these, it doesn't take all of these technologies, but all of these technologies, when weaved together, can improve that outcome over time. And that's what we're after. That, I think what I hear in it, and you don't say it, and I get to say it again, is like, there's no one ring to rule them all. Anyone who comes in and says, I'm going to give you an 80%, increase in what you do, I'm going to solve all of your problems and just trust me, that's not somebody I trust. I trust someone who says certain things don't work, certain things work, and there's really good places for these things, and let's weave this together and let's continuously improve together. So, I mean, I think I'd love to keep you here for a while longer. Alex, tell people where they can find you, where they can find Gamma to learn a little bit more. Yeah, let them know.
Yeah. Well, there is the App Store, of course, and the Google Play Store. Just go there, download Gamma, so GAMMAAR. Just download and try it. And we also have a nice partner promoting us. So Autodesk also recently invested. So yeah, hopefully this will give us a boost as well. Yeah, and feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, hit him up on LinkedIn. He's a great follow. And Nathan, I think you can attest to the we were playing around with it pre-show, and you were doing some things in your own house.
I was going to say, yeah, and any credibility from Autodesk is huge. And yeah, I was taking my IFC model and getting that loaded in. So yeah, excited to test it out after this. So yeah, I always love those free trials. Always good to tinker with things.
Gotta love that freemium model. Thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Alex Sidorov. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.